My liege, I have news.
Ah, what is it, young twerp?
There are men in town with carts of gold. They say it is a dragon's hoard.
What? What standard do they bear?
They have no standard, my liege. They look like, commoners.
How dare they? That much gold could destroy my kingdom. Arrest them! Arrest them at once!
If I may, my sire, they did say it was a dragon's hoard. That means they killed a dragon. Right, Tharn.
Twerp, send pages to all the baronies within a day's travel. Tell them to send their best knights, and I will give them a share of the treasure for each one. Forbid on pain of death anyone doing business with them.
My pardon, sire, but it might be better to keep an eye on them and learn who they are.
Yes, twerp. Go to these adventure types and tell them that they can stay at the Copper Mug as my guests, that I want to meet them within 2 days. Treat them very well.
And sire, would you like to have them followed? Should they leave?
Yes, of course, and have Ilgil use her magic to follow them. I don't want them escaping justice.
Yes, of course, sire.
And if one of them is noble, I will hold him ransom too. The others will all be killed. How dare they kill one of my dragons? Such treachery! Who do they think they are?
I just wanted to go over something that I think is applicable to RPG games, and I don't see it discussed too often, and that is how money is handled in an RPG world. And I think that a degree of realism is sort of needed when it comes to money that just isn't there in RPG games, and it should be, because it adds a whole new layer of gameplay to the game that isn't normally there. And it's one that I really like to have in the game. So I was just going to cover it. This isn't something a lot of people seem to know or understand how exactly this stuff works. Okay, no. Full disclosure, this is not real gold. This is not real treasure. This is from the dollar store. But it's the best I've got because, what do you do? So the first thing is that starting even 2,500 years ago, when Athens, during the Polynesian War, when Athens went to war with Sparta, the Athens decided to use inflation in order to fund their war. And that was 2,500 years ago, and it seems like that's sort of something that the wealthy politicians and so forth, is kind of a trick that they learned how to inflate to get wealthy. So what the Athens did is they didn't have gold coins, they had silver coins. When you brought your silver coins into Athens, not silver, sorry, coins, but when you brought silver into Athens and you wanted to spend it, it had to be minted into coins first before you were allowed to spend it. This is 2,500 years ago. So if you think about it, can your players just bring in hordes of gold and start spending it like mad? They would never be allowed to. And I'll explain exactly why. And it's very important, because if they were ever allowed to do that, the consequences would just be simply outrageous to the ruling classes. It is characterized by my skit. So what they did in Athens was they began to dilute the silver, and they would put less and less silver in the coins, and they put other kind of things like tin and whatever in them to create new coins, so there was less and less silver. So you would bring your silver to them, they would keep a whole bunch of it, produce a bunch of coins, say, here's your coins, and then they would produce a bunch more coins, and you couldn't trust the coins anymore because they weren't 100% silver. There was some percentage, and as they needed more and more money, they would reduce the percentage of silver in the coins. And that way, they could get wealthier. So, and this was a way of financing their war. So the other aspect is that let's suppose you find some kind of a treasure hoard, and you find out, oh, there's gold coins, there's silver coins. Well, those coins probably aren't the fiat currency of the kingdom that you're in. Now, fiat currency is the money that you have to use in a kingdom. And there's a reason there's a fiat currency. Fiat currencies give rulers and elites a massive amount of power, because then they control how much money is in the kingdom or in their country. And they don't just allow any old currency to come in and be spent. And they put restrictions on that. And very often, if you want to spend, coins of a different currency, they have to be melted down and formed into the fiat currency. So if a party comes in with a big thing of treasure and they expect they're just going to spend it, they're sadly mistaken, because these coins are probably ancient. These coins probably have nothing to do with the kingdom. They would be arrested and executed very quickly. You have to trade it in, at which point that's when your taxes are going to get taken off, and you're going to, say you have this, you're going to be lucky to walk away with one of these. Okay, it's not that bad, but that's where the taxation on it comes in. Okay. So there's two methods there. Now when your coins that you bring from a treasure hoard, from a dragon's hoard, let's say, when it's minted into coins so that you can actually spend it, it might be diluted with other minerals or other materials, because the king or the emperor or whoever's in charge might want the money themselves. They might be trying to fund some kind of a war, or more importantly, they understand the principle, the Cantillon effect, and a lot of people do understand this. So what that means is that the closer you are to new money, the more powerful that money is. Because as everybody knows, the more money you create, you get more inflation. So when a party comes in with a whole hoard, a dragon's hoard, that money hasn't entered the system yet. And so those players, those heroes, can go in and buy up things at the going rate. As they buy stuff up, the demand for that stuff increases because they're buying it, and it's that demand that causes the prices to go up. So we see that effect, say, in real estate today, where you have the government producing massive amounts of money. They give that money to BlackRock and other billionaires, and those people go out and buy houses for cheap, so that when you want to go buy a house, the market is so full of buyers and people that have bought up the property, entire housing complexes, that when you go to buy a house, it's just simply unaffordable. And that's why. That's that's called the Cantillon effect, because the people that first got the money, when the money's first printed by the government, and that's another misnomer. They say when the money is printed by the government actually, I'll use the US dollar as an example because it's the world currency. But when the US, quote unquote, prints money, it's digital. It's on a computer keyboard. In fact, only a fraction of the actual US dollars that are in existence actually are printed. It isn't the printing of money that causes inflation. It is the buying up of resources with all this fake money that causes it. So, and right now, I don't mean to be political. I'm just trying to explain how this works using real life examples. Right now, we're having supply chain problems, which is why food and stuff are going up in price. They're blaming the printing of money, but I don't think that that's applicable. So far over my lifetime anyway, the past 20 years, inflation's been pretty much contained in the housing market, which is why everybody said there's no inflation. It's like, yeah, right, try and buy a house, because that's what all the billionaires are buying. I don't think the billionaires are buying up all the food right now, with the exception of Gates maybe. But what's happening is that there are supply issues, so there's a lot less of these commodities available for people to buy, which is basically the same thing, and that's creating inflationary forces. So what I'm getting at here is that when players get a hoard of gold, they could completely destroy a kingdom. Utterly destroy that kingdom by going in, buying everything up. Everything gets super expensive. Even the king himself wouldn't be able to afford anything. Now, can you imagine anyone, a king, allowing that. Well, of course they're not going to allow it. In fact, they're going to want the treasure for themselves. They're going to want to be the first movers. They're going to insist on it. They might give you a reward for capturing, but they're going to tax the rest of it so that they can either keep it if they don't understand. If they don't understand how this system works, they're going to try and keep the gold for themselves. But if they do understand how it works, then they're going to go and try and spend it as much as possible before the consequences of their spending catch up to them and the prices get too high. And that way they can buy land, they can buy castles, build castles, they can raise armies, whatever they want, for very, very little money compared to what it's going to cost in the future. And more importantly, what it's going to cost their enemies in the future. Unfortunately, the common people get squeezed in the middle of this as they watch their money get more and more diluted, less and less gold, less and less silver in the coins, etc. So our system today is a little bit different because we don't have a gold-based or a silver-based system anymore. So so the forces I'm describing play out a little bit differently in modern times. But this is how it would be in a D&D game. So I think it's extremely important to understand that. Okay, I'll give an example. Adventures in the past, and there were adventures, across North America, across the whole world, people would adventure, was very looked down on. People weren't, we tend to look back and think that that was romantic and they were romanticized, and certainly to some degree they were, but also to some degree they weren't. They were looked down on, they were vilified, etc. Because of the effect. Spain, I think, bankrupted itself 5 times with gold brought back from South America. And so if you went out and you sought a whole bunch of gold, and let's say you stole a whole bunch of gold and you brought it back to the kingdom, if you didn't have authorization from the king to bring that gold, or you didn't take it to the king and give him his share, you were in big trouble. You had a very bad name. So the other aspect of all this is that, generally speaking, adventurers that go out and find a whole bunch of gold, or even a little bit of gold, are going to be in a lot of trouble if they didn't get permission first. Because you have to remember, now we live in a very egalitarian, free society, and I don't think people understand how restrictive sort of a feudalism system is. But in a feudalist system, the king owns everything. He is the boss of everything. And so if you go out into the woods and you find a ruin and you take a bunch of stuff from it, you've stolen from the king. There's just no way around it. There are no lands that he hasn't claimed. And even if you claim them, by bringing them into his kingdom, you're committing a crime in his opinion. You would be. A good example is, say, like Canada. If I were to find this in Canada, I could apply. I would have to turn this into the government, and I could apply to keep my expenses for discovering it. But that's all the treasure I would be entitled to have. The rest of it just goes right to the crown. And yeah, we call it the crown here. So that's an example. There are a few countries that would let you keep it, but most don't. So, and the same would go for adventures. So in that way, adventure guilds and stuff do make sense in RPG games, because an adventure guild would ensure that you had permission to go get to go get that treasure. Another example would be, if you like, pirates versus buccaneers. Pirates were people that didn't have permission. Buccaneers were people that did have permission. So a buccaneer could fly under a certain flag, whether it was English, Spanish, French, whatever. As long as they were under that flag, as long as they had permission from that monarch, they were allowed to go out and commit piracy, because that monarch would get a big chunk of the change. And they like that. They want their taste. So that's basically what's happened to us right now, and is the Cantillon effect. We've got Cantillionaires all over the place. People that were very close to the money when it first got printed, or they can borrow the money when it first gets created for very low. They go out and buy up stuff, like Bill Gates is buying up farmland right now. He's getting it super cheap, but farmland, because he's buying it up so much, the price is going to increase. But he's right beside the money source, right? So he can buy as much land as he wants. He doesn't have to care, because he knows the money isn't going to be worth as much in the future, but who cares? He got his land. Okay. So that's one of the things I'll get back to, is the freedom aspect of all this. In D&D, we tend to play as though it were modern times set back in the fantasy era, and that isn't how things played out then. And if you're going to have kings and if you're going to have feudalism, in my opinion, you might as well do it right. The kings owned everything. Nobles had some rights, like they could own land and stuff too. But the king could take it away, by hook or by crook. The king's word was law. And so the way things were ordered back then was everybody was considered to have some kind of a ruler over them, and the king only had God. To be truthful, they were very, very, very horrible people. All the elites were. I'll do a video on that. I'll show examples and stuff. So the idea that you could just go out and grab treasure and come back and there's no consequences and try and spend it and there's no consequences absolutely wouldn't work. If you could even own the treasure would probably depend on your status. Are you noble or not? If you're a peasant, then all you've done is you've gotten some treasure for whoever your lord is, whoever your landlord, whoever your king is. You've just gotten them treasure, and that's how that works. So the other effect is that if you go out and you find a treasure hoard and you find a whole bunch of coins, you don't recognize the coins or they're ancient coins, but you want to go into town and you want to spend them. In certain places at certain times, that has been allowed. That's called money freedom, where you can spend whatever money you want. But countries, when they start to lock down their citizens, that's one of the very first things they crack down on. So again, turning to the U.S. as an example, in the when was it? Let me try and remember. I think it was 1857. Yeah, it was the Coinage Act. And what that did was that brought in a fiat currency, and it meant that you were no longer allowed to spend other currencies in the country. And the reason to do that is because of the amount of control, as you can see, because when you're only allowed to spend that country's money, then whoever creates that money is right beside the money. They can grab a whole bunch of it. They can spend it quick before inflation hits. And that is how the wealthy stay fabulously wealthy. And that is going to work 100%. It's going to be 100% applicable in any fantasy world too. Now, the reason I say this adds an extra layer of fun to the game is because it enters in a whole layer of complexity. For example, you could have, if you had players that, say, didn't want to participate in this and said, oh, how rude, that's a terrible, horrible system. Well, wait until they get a kingdom and an adventuring party comes in with 1 million gold coins from 1,000 years ago and starts spending them and literally wants to buy the castle out from under his butt. He's going to think differently about it. It's just a fact. And so, after digesting this for a little while, you'll see just the different layers, like the intrigues. You always hear about all the intrigues at court and stuff. Well, this was a lot of the intrigues, was people just trying to be able to live their lives, being able to have stuff, being able to be close to the money, close to the king, and that's what that basically means. Anyway, one other thing I want to mention is that Norway was actually kind of interesting. They had a law called the Frostang law, I think it was, and they had a law that if any king were to seize your property, you were obliged to kill him, because they understood that a king that could take property and basically insisting that you use a single type of money in a country is that. It is theft, they would kill him. And that was called the Frostang law. And it was interesting because this was in Norway. It was a Viking law. And the Rus, basically. And it wasn't, it lasted all the way until Harada. And he basically brought in inflationary policies, insisted on everybody using a certain currency, so forth, so that he could fund a war because he meant to take over England. Now, of course, he was killed trying to do that, but Norway basically just remained that way after that. And but prior to that, you could spend any money you wanted. It didn't matter as long as the person would accept it. And the point there is that sometimes, you know, if you found a coin that, say, was only 30% gold or 50% gold, it would be worth less than a coin that was 100% gold. So by having different currencies, the different values of the currency would depend on how inflated the coin was. And I think that's an aspect of D&D that isn't thought about much. Like, for example, you could have a dragon hoard, say from 1,000 years ago, and you find it, and the dragon thinks he's rich, everybody thinks he's rich. And we always think of a gold coin as pure, or a silver coin as pure. But, you know, and they are often, but they're often not. Rome did the same thing. They inflated their monetary system in order to fund wars. And so Roman coins can often not be 100% gold. They can be a little bit of something else mixed in, you know, a little something in there. Well, imagine if adventurers go and they find a dragon's hoard and it's coins from 1,000 years ago. Oh, we're rich, and they go off to town and they get the gold assayed and they find out it's only, you know, 40% gold. So you can give out a huge treasure hoard and then they can find out it's not actually all gold. There's a tendency in D&D just to think that gold coins are all 100% gold, or silver coins are all 100% silver. And there's absolutely no reason that they would be. Like I say, even 2,500 years ago, the Athenians were inflating their coins. That is, mixing other materials into them, which devalues them. Because the actual value of a coin is the percentage of the valuable mineral in the coin. So if you only put, you know, 50% gold in your coin, that coin is only worth 50% as much now. But you can control that by insisting that everybody has to use your coin. If you bring in a coin that's 100% gold, you're going to go to jail, probably be executed, because you're not allowed to spend it. You have to spend the fiat currency, the money that the king says you can spend. And you're going to have to bring your dragon's hoard to the king. Or you're going to have to raise an army to protect it, because they're not going to like that much. Anyway, that's it. That's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. And please leave a like and a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. A like and a thumbs up. And subscribe. Please subscribe. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm rambling here. Talk to you next time. Bye.